Deep in the heart of an emerald valley, where the sun painted golden patterns through the leaves of ancient oaks, a bustling community of tiny creatures thrived. The meadow was a world unto itself, a tapestry of wildflowers nodding in the breeze, crystal dewdrops clinging to spiderwebs at dawn, and the constant hum of life going about its daily business. Here, in this miniature kingdom, the most important lessons of life played out in the smallest of ways. Each morning, as the first rays of sunlight touched the tallest blade of grass, Andy the ant would emerge from the intricate tunnels of his anthill. His polished black armor gleamed as he blew the morning signal on his acorn cap whistle. Immediately, the anthill came alive like a well-oiled machine. Columns of worker ants marched forth in perfect formation, each squad with its specific mission. The Forager Brigade, armed with powerful mandibles, ventured out along carefully mapped trails to collect seeds and grains. The Construction Corps reinforced tunnel walls with a special mixture of clay and ant saliva that hardened stronger than concrete. Nurse ants tended to the young in climate-controlled chambers deep underground, while scout ants patrolled the perimeter, ever watchful for signs of danger. Andy supervised it all with quiet efficiency, his antennae twitching as he monitored every detail of their preparations. Across the bubbling brook that divided the meadow, beneath the shade of Old Oak Bridge, Gary the grasshopper stretched his long, powerful legs with a contented sigh. His emerald-green exoskeleton shimmered in the sunlight as he polished his beloved fiddle with a soft leaf. "Ah, another glorious day," he exclaimed to no one in particular. With a nimble flick of his wings, he launched himself onto a nearby sunflower, where he began tuning his instrument, the notes floating lazily on the warm summer air. As the days grew hotter and the sun climbed higher in the sky, subtle changes began whispering through the meadow. The once plentiful wild berries became harder to find. The mornings carried a faint crispness that hadn't been there before. The songs of birds preparing for migration filled the evening air. Andy noticed these signs immediately and called an emergency council meeting deep in the heart of the anthill. "The signs are clear," Andy announced to his commanders. "First frost will arrive in 17 days. We must accelerate our preparations immediately." The colony sprang into action with renewed urgency. Special teams were dispatched to harvest the last of the season's bounty. Underground storage chambers were expanded and reinforced. Ventilation shafts were fitted with special filters to regulate temperature and humidity. The anthill transformed into a masterpiece of food preservation technology, grain silos with moisture control systems, fruit drying racks with perfect airflow, even emergency tunnels leading to secret backup caches. Meanwhile, Gary hosted his endless summer festival, a grand celebration that lasted from dawn till dusk and often well into the night. He had convinced the crickets to form a percussion section, while a trio of ladybugs provided harmonic accompaniment. Beetles carried lanterns made of glowing fungus to light their nighttime performances. The music floated across the meadow, mingling with the scent of ripe fruit and summer blossoms. "Come join us, Andy," Gary called out during one particularly lively jam session, his bow flying across the strings in a flurry of notes. "You're missing all the fun." Andy paused briefly from supervising a team carrying a particularly large grain of wheat. "Your music is lovely, Gary," he replied, "but winter comes whether we're ready or not. My colony must prepare." Gary laughed, executing a perfect backflip mid-note. "Winter? That's ages away. Look around you, the meadow is bursting with life. There's plenty of time for work later." The days continued their inexorable march, each one slightly shorter than the last. The ants worked tirelessly, their stores growing as the season waned. Then came the morning when Gary awoke to a world transformed overnight. His fiddle strings were stiff with frost, his breath visible in the crisp air. The once lush meadow now lay barren, flowers withered. Seed pods empty, the ground hardened by winter's first touch. Panic set in as Gary hopped frantically from plant to plant, finding nothing but dry husks where juicy berries had once grown. His stomach growled painfully, a sensation he'd never truly experienced before. The cold seeped into his joints, making his once nimble legs stiff and clumsy. Even his beloved fiddle felt heavy and unresponsive in his chilled grip. With his last reserves of energy, Gary made his way to the anthill. The journey, which would have been an easy hop in summer, now felt like an impossible trek. His vision blurred as he finally reached the familiar entrance, his knock more of a feeble scrape than a proper alert. The door opened, and warmth spilled out like liquid gold. Andy stood in the entrance, his expression a mix of concern and understanding. Inside, the anthill hummed with comfortable activity. Worker ants moved through well-organized tunnels, carrying supplies to various chambers. The air was rich with the comforting aroma of stored grains and dried fruits. I didn't realize," Gary stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Andy helped him inside, where nurse ants immediately began treating his mild frostbite with special warmed leaf compresses. "The signs were there," Andy said gently. "Summer never lasts forever." As Gary recovered in the carefully climate-controlled guest chamber, he marveled at the anthill's ingenious design. Ventilation shafts maintained perfect airflow. Specialized chambers housed different food types at their ideal preservation conditions. Even the sleeping quarters were positioned to take advantage of geothermal warmth from deeper underground. In the weeks that followed, Gary found ways to contribute. He organized musical performances to boost colony morale during the long winter nights. More surprisingly, the ants discovered practical applications for his music. Certain vibrations helped preserve food longer, specific frequencies repelled grain moths, and rhythmic work songs actually increased tunneling efficiency by nearly a quarter. When spring finally returned to the meadow, it revealed a changed community. The ants still maintained their disciplined work ethic, but now their labor was accompanied by music and occasional breaks to enjoy the sunshine. Gary still played his fiddle with passion, but now his songs carried the wisdom of experience, and he always made sure to set aside some time for gathering provisions. The other meadow creatures noticed the transformation too. The annual First Harvest Festival became a celebration that honored both hard work and joyful living. Andy and Gary stood side by side on a makeshift stage, the ant with his clipboard of schedules and plans, the grasshopper with his fiddle ready to play. Together, they conducted a symphony of preparation and joy that echoed through the valley, a reminder to all that while tomorrow must be prepared for, today is meant to be lived. And so, as the seasons turned in their endless cycle, the meadow thrived under this balanced wisdom. The ants remembered to pause and appreciate the beauty around them, while the grasshoppers learned the value of looking ahead. For in the grand design of nature, there is time for both work and play, for both preparation and celebration, but only those who understand this balance truly flourish when winter comes. The story of Andy and Gary became legend in the meadow, passed down through generations of insects. It served as a timeless reminder that while summer's abundance may seem endless, winter's wisdom lies in preparing during times of plenty, and that even the most serious of workers can learn to appreciate music. Just as the most carefree of musicians can learn the value of planning ahead. And so, if you ever find yourself in a sun-drenched meadow on a summer afternoon, listen carefully. You might just hear the faint strains of Gary's fiddle floating on the breeze, accompanied by the steady, rhythmic marching of Andy's ant colony, a perfect harmony of foresight and joy, playing the eternal song of life's delicate balance. Having learnt from this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more interesting stories.